and roll. So Tom, like I was saying, founder and CEO of your studio. Tell us a little bit about what you guys work on, some of the retailers and brands that you create experiences for.
So we work globally with Nike. You've got a lot of our Nike work on the screen there. We also work a lot with Google. I just saw Google's got their stand over there. We work with them globally as a retail design and strategy partner. Businesses tend to bring us in when they're trying to define, who their consumer is, where they're going as a brand, where they're going as as an experience. And then we design and build pretty much everything from whether it's a pop-up experiential to a full flagship store to how they activate and create retail marketing across the store. So our work can tend to be, incredibly visual, but there's a lot of strategic thinking that goes into a lot of the process.
So we were talking earlier about sort of the age of AI, and obviously a lot of our conversations today have been about agentic commerce and the future of that omni-channel journey. So I would love to kind of dig into the component of physical retail with you and talk about, how can retailers think about what the role physical retail plays moving forward within that landscape?
Yeah.
And with trust being a big thing in our society nowadays, and it eroding and consumers really finding difficulty trusting. And what role does that play in the brand experience, and how can retailers tap back into it?
I mean, it's a great question. I think a lot of the retailers that we work with, that is the question they're asking themselves. How do they stay relevant? How do they find the consumer who they're trying to connect in with? Because a lot of the data that we're finding, because of agentic and because of how people are shopping online and because of the kind of polluted data that exists online, it's actually hard to define and understand who your shopper is, how are they shopping you. Actually, the cleanest data that we're finding is when people come to pop-up experiences, when people come to, in-store. That's when we're actually getting a clean set of data. You're speaking to a customer firsthand, asking them why they like their product, what they like about the product, why they like your brand. So you can really play that data back to the business. But also we're finding that there's so much distrust in the world. I just did a talk earlier today on this topic of trust and, the kind of changing world and how physical retail is, the kind of antidote to that. And we're finding that, that especially kind of pop-up spaces, it means you can, if you're a digital brand, you can get in front of customers quite easily, quite agile, to have a real connection with them and build that trust that is vital as a retail. We're selling products to people, and they need to trust the products that we're creating. So it's I think it's vital as AI becomes more woven into everything we do.
And what role do sort of demographics and generational shifts? What does that look like? Is it really in the younger demographics that you're seeing that desire for physical retail? Is it spread across? And what do you see being most effective for those generational shoppers?
I think it's spread across. I think what people have realized now, or retailers I think there it is. It keeps going in and off. I think people have realized you can be more targeted. You can be really targeted with the physical retail experience, especially with pop-ups. We did a load of work with Coach recently over the last few years, and they were being very targeted, wanting to speak to a Gen Z consumer. The shopper that they had, the historical shopper, was an older shopper who loved the brand, shopped with them for a long time. But they were really struggling to attract that younger, new consumer who's going to be, the sort of future, legacy consumer. So we helped them really work on pop-ups and experiential. We designed a first play store, which was really tailored to a Gen Z consumer. So you can be really targeted, really strategic, trying to connect in with a specific demographic. And because it's a temporary store, you can test it. Does it work? Try and do things like customization, events, experiential. Does it work with your consumer group or your potential future consumer group who might be the younger demographic? So we find with pop-ups and experiential and physical store, you can be much more intentional and strategic with the demographic you're trying to engage with. So I think there's that part, but back to your question, like who is kind of shopping physical experience? We're finding it's this thirst across demographic. People want to go into store. People still want to touch and feel and try on product. I think I can't remember the exact stat, but the stat there's a huge, like, less returns. There's so many less returns when people go into store, try it on versus buying something digitally. It's because you tried it on, it fits, you trust the materiality. You can't trust everything that you kind of see. Is it going to fit me? Does the fabric, look as good as it does in the photo? Whereas in stores or pop-ups, you're touching something firsthand. So.
And then kind of what role do you see technology playing in that pop-up experience, kind of combining those try-on techs with recommendation agents, and how do you see that being integrated into the store or being part of that journey, and where does that fit in?
That was kind of the roundup to the talk that I just did, actually, was, we don't see the stores becoming more digital. We see them becoming, we see AI tools helping make them more human. There is this thirst for service and, human interaction and recommendation. So we're really seeing that AI is that tool in the background that can help either guide a store associate to make the right, guidance or recommendations, help put looks together through AI visually, where people can make better decisions on, like, how they pair clothes, or also infrastructural, AI to just make it smoother from end to end, whether that's convenience or, when you come to store, the process from trying something on to, making that purchase. How do you make it as enjoyable and smooth as possible? So I think we've gone through a period of stores having tons of screens, and we all went through the iPad era where everyone all of a sudden had iPads. I think we're now moving towards where service and hospitality and that sort of human experience is the most vital part. And then AI and the digital things that in the background are really, pushing that stuff to the front.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So really, you're seeing AI enabling that human connection, by running in the background and really facilitating that in store.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, why do you've got to think the reason why would you go into store? You don't go into store to, do something digital. You go into store because you want to touch something, you want to experience something. You might want to taste something if it's a food experience. That is the reason you go in. That's why you get up off the sofa or get up off a chair to drive to something. You want a different experience. So we do believe that it's all about that humanity and all about that kind of sensory experience.
Can you share a little bit about some of the work you're doing with your clients on creating those sensory experiences? What are you seeing being really effective? What are maybe some examples of test and learns that didn't learn the way they were supposed to?
Oh, we did one for a brand that I will not say which brand it was.
Please don't do that.
But we were trying it was a changing room experience where they wanted an athlete to be speaking, encouraging quotes when someone went into the changing room. And it was a male voice, and he had quite a deep voice. And so when we tested it out in some of the stores in the women's changing room, they would be trying on some clothes, and then all of a sudden in the background it'd be like, "You look great today," in their ear, and it was like, oh, okay. That didn't quite work because we had people really creeped out. So it was, it can work. It's great to go and do R&D testing first, before you're deploying what seems like a great experiential thing that looks good in the presentation, but actually when you get a customer to go and try it. Also, we're getting asked to do much more strategy around, like, scent and sound. If you go into a lot of stores on the high street, you're walking around and there's some sort of banging techno, and you're meant to be in maybe quite a serene beauty environment. Sometimes the music and scent and all the sensory doesn't match what the brand stands for. The techno might be perfect for some brands, but I think we need to be much more intentional, much more thinking about what's the emotion and the feeling that we're trying to create, and how does it marry up to the person, the customer we're trying to connect in with. So we're doing a lot of work on that at the minute.
I want to change gears now just a little bit and talk about this strategy.
Yeah.
When pop-ups first became a thing, it was really taking advantage of those leases that were coming up in more traditional malls, and brands were testing those spaces. And then they became largely seasonal. And so kind of what are you seeing those trends now for how retailers are using pop-ups, and how is that different from how it first came about?
Yeah, I think people are really looking at a retail ecosystem more holistically now. So, you've got your flagships, you've got your .com, you've got your social commerce, and then you've also got, pop-up and events, and they all play a role. And I think the misconception is that they all need to drive, a sale, and it needs to be obvious what that sale was. This pop-up sold X amount of products. And I think it's much more working as a holistic, ecosystem. And I see the pop-up and events part of the ecosystem, creating hype, creating trust, creating relevance, and we see pop-ups being much more intentional. Of like, okay, why does it exist? Which demographic are we targeting? Whose social feeds are we trying to show up in? If we are trying to drive sales, what are we doing to drive sales? How are we trying to, drive intrigue? So, whereas before, many moons ago, longer than I would like to admit when I set my business up, with some of the projects that we see up here, the Topshop and Pandora one, that was 10 or so years ago. That was really just with this one. We didn't really know what we just wanted to create something cool and get a queue out the door of the store. Whereas now we really understand the purpose of them, and how they can affect social media, how they can affect demographic and community, all those things. So yeah, I think it's really matured as a tool within the more holistic retail ecosystem.
And are you still seeing, the halo effect with some of these brands going into markets that, maybe they didn't have a location before?
Yeah, we're still seeing, a huge increase on people shopping digitally when we do a pop-up or a physical store. Also, when you remove a store from a neighborhood or an area, we're seeing traffic go down. So there's an 11% reduction in an area when you close a store. So I think a few years back when it was all doom and gloom about retail apocalypse, closing all the stores.
Retail's dead.
Retail's dead. We've all been there, and it was like all the stores are closing. Retailers actually realized that .com traffic was reducing when physical experience started to peel away. So actually, they work in tandem. They work as a partnership. The same with experiential. You need all of those different touch points in your toolbox to be able to be really effective.
So as you look ahead towards, the rest of this year, looking ahead, get your crystal ball out.
Yeah.
3-5 years down the line, what's retail going to look like? What do you see being an emerging trend, and what's a trend that you hope just goes away?
I think the humanity of what we do is going to become more and more important. So I think as AI, content creation is questioned, is it real? I think the premiumization of human-made is going to be, that is going to become the expensive thing. There was a quote by Sam Altman where he spoke about, AI can create this most, incredible image of, the beautiful art. But if it isn't signed by a human, it has no value because it's just being kind of created with AI. And I think there's going to be more of that thinking where human-made, meeting someone in person, like that human experience is going to become a premium. And that's where I think premium brands are going to start to lean towards, like exclusive, in-person, human. Things that I would like to go away, I don't know. Social media influencers who like fake AI ones. I've got so many on my feed. of like just AI influencers.
And they're very realistic.
They're so realistic. I find it quite unnerving. It's like, it's mad. So that, I don't necessarily think that's a trend that I'm like particularly happy
You're
with.
to see that one stick around.
No,
That's fair.
exactly. But I think it's here to stay, so.
True.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, it's been lovely chatting with you
Yeah,
today.
thank you.
I really appreciate you joining us on the stage and sharing your insights on physical retail, and can't wait to see what you get into next.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.